I've been in situations where, you know, I had to cross the street because I didn't want to scare the white lady that was walking.
It would get to the point where I would start to count how many times a woman would clutch her bag.
Michaela is a 7th grader at a majority white middle school. Her responses completely change depending on the race of the children in the picture.
Marcy and Renee are in school together, and they're in the hallway, and I'd like you to tell me what you think is happening in this picture.
She probably looks like she's gonna steal it because Marcia's like, oh no, what happened? And he's like, hey, look, 20 bucks.
And so, do you think that Renee is doing something good, bad, or just neutral?
I think she's gonna take the money.
Do you think that Renee and Marcy are likely to be friends or not?
Not really.
And what do you think about Marcy's parents? Do you think they'd be comfortable with her being friends with Renee or not?
Well, if they find out the situation that happened, they might be a little concerned about if Renee's a thief.
In this one we have Erica and Allison, and they're also in the hallway at school. Can you tell me what it seems is happening in this picture?
Allison looks like a sweet girl, so I think that she would pick up Erica's money and give it back to her.
Okay, so then do you think Allison's doing something good, bad, or neutral?
Pretty good.
And she's doing something that's okay, not okay, or kind of in the middle?
Not okay.
Not okay? Is Andre doing something good, bad, or just okay?
Good.
I want people to know that I'm perfectly fine and I'm not going to hurt anybody or do anything bad.
Hi, I'm Jerry Kroth, an associate professor in psychology at Santa Clara University. And I've written 2 books on this subject, and not exactly on this subject, but the sources for this video come from these 2 books. So let's go and ask a question. Have we really come a long way since the days of the Civil War? Well, we've had women's suffrage in 1920, John F. Kennedy did a great deal to improve race relations. We had the Voting Rights Act, Non-Discrimination Act, affirmative action. So we think that we've made some very positive changes in our lives on the issue of race. But a poll conducted by the Pew Foundation in 2017 asks, is racial discrimination a major problem in the United States? And whites say, only a minority say it's a problem, but a majority of blacks do. Almost 2 to 1. Majority of blacks, minority of whites think this is a problem. Somebody has a different kind of experience than someone else. So David Pilgrim, a sociologist, wrote a book on images, stereotypic images of African Americans before the Civil War, which were basically describing them as meek, docile, groveling, and post-Civil War, where the image of an African American male particularly morphed. He became dangerous, a thug, a violent, impulsive, criminal, dirty, impure, rhythmic, a dope fiend, hypersexual, and a brute. And with a particular attraction to white women. So that was the 1899 racist image of a black male in racist America at that time. In 1915, the first big racist movie was made, Birth of a Nation. The Ku Klux Klan appears in 1927. Now, in this video, we're going to look at films where racial stereotypes are prevalent, not in 1899, but right now, in which males are portrayed as brutes, criminals, hypersexual, predators of white women, drug addicted, just like the 1899 white racist literature. Now, I have to preface this by saying, if you have a heart, this is not easy to look at. You're not going to see anybody decapitated, but these are racial stereotypes, and they're unpleasant to see. But we're gathering evidence here first, before we draw any conclusions. Hold your values in abeyance. Just let's collect the data. But this is for adults. This is not for children to see. So viewer discretion is advised. Let us begin with Black Male as a Pimp. This is a movie called Willie Dynamite.
Willie D. Willie D.
They call him Willie D. D for dude. He's got to be number 1. D for devil. No one crosses Willie D. D for dynamite. Willie Dynamite.
7 women in the palm of his hand. Willie D. Willie D. Got a woman for every man. Willie D. Willie D. It's magic the way he runs his game. Ooh, Willie. Never treating you.
So, listen to this review. Willie D is lively, funny, and sometimes touching. Blaxploitation completists will want to check it out for sure. I have no idea what a blaxploitation completist might be. But one thing to note is that the portrait of the black male in this movie is that he's hypersexual, he's violent towards women, he slapped one in this trailer, he's a human trafficker, a predator, a criminal, and don't forget, D is for devil. Okay, I noticed something, and I noticed that the producers of this movie are white. You can't really make a movie without a producer. I mean, or no one will see it. But we have white people involved in this process. Now, there's another movie, another pimp movie called American Pimp. This is done by 2 black filmmakers from Detroit named the Hughes brothers. And, quote, it is a documentary about the state of prostitution in urban sectors of the U.S. Well, that sounds like a PBS documentary, doesn't it? Producing an ostentatious, profanity-laden celebration of the ghetto subculture of pimping. Well, this is a celebration, I guess. Okay, so they interview real pimps, but they also have fictional pimps. I didn't understand why they did that. But it's supposedly a documentary. But if you notice the promotional trailer, I mean, there are strobe lights everywhere. They're trying to get your attention. They want you to see this less for academic reasons and more as a celebration of something. Outrageously entertaining, the reviews say. So here comes that strobe light, fast-moving trailer. Hoping to get your attention. This movie did not make a lot of money at the box office, but it certainly tried to bring in an audience. Now, there was one interview with a pimp that I could not understand. He used the word pepperwood, which had something to do with his euphemism for a white prostitute. But this is an excerpt from that movie. I typed it out because I couldn't really follow him. So here's a slice of this movie.
Liking what's liking me. Anything that's gonna come through the door with it, you know, I might fuck with if the coast is clear. But now I like to have a white bitch, you know what I mean? Because as the cliche go, they do let you pimp. Black bitch gonna make you pimp, you know, because she gonna have one of them old snapdragon mouths, one loud talk, out talk, wrong talk of pimp. Where Peckerwood just gonna be meek, you know. Pimp can pimp with his hands in his pocket. Ain't never got to raise your hand, you know what I mean? Just about out your mouth, you know, and the bitch gonna come through your door with it.
So how many women you got right now?
About 2.5. You know, yeah, about 2.5. I'm gonna tell the truth, shame the devil. You know what I mean? Because one bitch kind of on hold. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Yeah.
And they're all white girls.
No, I got a Peckerwood, a black bitch, and a Filipina right now. You know, so I'm mixing it up right now.
Okay, so that's a slice of something that is supposed to be entertaining. Now, notice he says he doesn't have to raise his hand with a pepperwood. So he obviously raises his hand. So here is the image that we're seeing condensed into what? An 1899 image. He's a criminal, he's a misogynist, he's a thug, he's hypersexualized, he's a pimp, he's a human trafficker. Okay, welcome back to 1899. Now, I noticed that even though this movie is made by Albert and his brother Alan Hughes from Detroit, the producer is Steve Perry and Kevin Messick, and the distributors are from 7th Art Releasing. White people at the top. You don't get a movie seen by anybody unless you have a producer and a distributor. And here we have white people. You could ask, hey, why not make a documentary about National Merit Scholars or Google Science Fair winners or African American musical prodigies. There are something like 11 movies about pimps in the American Cinema Library. Here's another one called Street Smart with Morgan Freeman as a young man. He's playing a character called Fast Black.
I've been thinking I'd like to do something else for a while.
Oh, really? Like what? Brain insertion or something? Look, you doing what you do. The problem is you ain't been doing it too swift yet late. That's your pal, the reporter there.
He's not my pal.
You thinks he can hide from me in jail? I can reach him anywhere. Anywhere. And you trying to play all sides, just like me. Yes, you are.
No, I'm not.
Yes, you are.
I am not.
What, are you raising your voice to me?
Just leave me alone.
Hold on, girl. Let this... I told you to shut up! Hello. What's going on here? You want to start running this outfit or something?
I just wish I could have some time to figure some stuff out.
Oh,
you know?
yeah. But why now? I mean, I thought that was my job. I mean, well, if you're changing positions...
Can't you just leave me alone?
You want me to leave you alone? Huh? You want me to leave you alone?
Yes!
So that's considered smart, cunning, and cool by the LA Weekly. So we're going to have a little bit of cognitive dissonance here with Hollywood's values and perhaps our own. But for the point of what we're doing here, we're gathering evidence, and we have some qualities that have been put into the character of Fast Black. He's a misogynist, he's a human trafficker, he's violent, he's hypersexual, he's a criminal, and he's a predator of white women. Okay, that's Fast Black. And I've noticed something, that the people who are making this movie, who are the ones at the top, are the writer, the producer, the director, the associate producer, all white men, all white males. Starting to see some trends here, aren't we? So let's ask a question now. I'm going to ask this later too. Why are you doing this? And I've got 5 motives here, because we don't know why they're doing it, and let's admit we don't. But we can sort of infer a few motives. One is not very complimentary, and they can become even more complimentary as we go along. First one is Blaxploitation. Now, they may have a special meaning for that in the industry, but I understand the word Blaxploitation to mean that you are trying to profit from the exploitation of racial stereotypes of black people, and you're doing it for money, and you're charging admission to say, come and see this black pathology we're going to show you. Kind of like a circus marquee. Another possible motive is that you're telling it like it is. Hold on. No, I'm not doing that. I am trying to describe life in America's inner cities, and it's not pleasant. It's not easy to see. So it's tough, but we have First Amendment rights in this country, and we're trying to describe reality, folks. So get used to it. Well, there's a professor named Tricia Rose from Brown who says, wait just a second. There are a lot of realities in the inner city you are not portraying. Why make 10 movies about pimps when you haven't made any documentaries about how difficult it is to be a senior citizen in the inner city? Okay, and having to travel 5 miles to buy groceries. There are a lot of elements of inner city life which are not portrayed in movies. So you're not really telling it like it is. A third, and this is, I think, very important. I think a lot of people believe this, and that is that we are not making racist movies. We are making movies that have a mitigating moral theme. It's a movie that's against drugs, against crime, against pimping, against gang violence. Okay, so we have, this movie is, you're taking these scenes out of context. This is quite a redemptive movie. that you're seeing, and that's why it's highly reviewed, and that's why we're making it. That's possible. Another possibility is that, we look at those Hughes brothers. They made a movie. We're opening doors for them. We're giving them an opportunity. We're producing their movie for them. We're doing them a favor. We're helping people. Okay, so we have a few minutes. Let's put down other, just because maybe we just don't know why they're doing this. Okay? Let's go on now to a female stereotype. Usually the sexualized female, the Jezebel, or the mammy.
From the sassy black friend to the sexy prostitute on the wrong side of the tracks to the overly helpful house cleaner, black women are so very often stereotyped in pop culture. But these stereotypes are more than lazy writing, they have long histories. So maybe we should just get fucking rid of them. Meet the Jezebel. She's sexual, she's aggressive, she just wants it all the time. You know what I mean. And while this stereotype has persisted throughout TV and film history, today you can usually find the Jezebel archetype in music videos and all over reality TV. It also pops up in the policing of black women's bodies and sexuality. Just ask Rihanna, or Nicki, or Beyonce. But remember, too much sexuality can be threatening. So, meet the mammy. Mammy's fat, old, and very dark-skinned. She was given these physical traits to show that she was undesirable and prove that white slave owners didn't find black women attractive. The mammy lived on through Jim Crow to imply that black women were only fit to be domestic workers. We began to see the mammy characters everywhere, from books and movies to advertising, like Aunt Jemima. And if you think this stereotype doesn't still have power in media, the first black woman to win an Academy Award for acting was Hattie McDaniel, playing a slave-era mammy in Gone with the Wind. 70+ years later, the incredibly talented Octavia Spencer won an Oscar for playing a 1950s-style mammy in The Help. So black women are either seductresses or non-sexual happy workers. So what else is there?
So let's continue in this new direction here and take a look at black female stereotypes. This was a movie called Foxy Brown. Quote, Pam Grier is a whole lot of woman who showcases unrelenting sexiness while battling the villains. It was part of the Blaxploitation genre. The film was confiscated in the UK as obscene, but it played...
Hey girl, you're the kind of woman that a man needs.
You see a man anywhere, send him in, because I do need a man.
And murder if you don't treat her nice.
Sounds like a public menace.
Foxy Brown, however, as a movie, was made by 4 white people who were, there were also black crews and cast members and so forth, but the director is white, the producers seem to be white, the company that made this, American International Films, did 6 other blaxploitation films. So again, we have this contingent of white males at the upper ends of the storytelling hierarchy. This is a movie that I find particularly disturbing. We have in here another morally elevating story with very, very, very difficult racial stereotypic backdrops. This is about a 12-year-old boy surviving and developing the tools to survive the hazards of ghetto life. Now, let's pull ourselves out of the drama and say, what are we actually watching? Okay, we are watching a 12-year-old boy who calls an adult woman a bitch. We're watching a black woman portrayed as a drug addict. We're watching a black woman who is sexually propositioning a minor. We're watching a black woman portrayed as a prostitute. And we're watching a 12-year-old boy slap an adult woman in the face. Okay, so now that we've sort of processed these negative images, we notice that Hollywood seems to be in denial about what we've been just watching, because they think this is a great movie, a movie filled with drama and excitement, unfolding a plot of brilliant complexity, powerful and riveting. 2 thumbs up. Okay? Now, Fresh did not make a lot of money, only $8 million. But what I noticed again is that the people at the person who put those words in that woman's mouth, the screenwriter, is a white guy. The co-producer is a white guy. The executive producers are white guys. And we're seeing a pattern, aren't we?
Applied to African American women, which is this hyper-sexualized version of black women. And you see it everywhere. You see it in not only music videos, you see it on television. Like this, there's this lack of self-control, this lack of morals.
So, Professor Cornel West from the Union Theological Seminary says, with all the richness in black life right now, the only thing Hollywood gives us is black pathology. Well, we're certainly seeing a pretty large sample of it here. Let's put some facts in context here, okay? A survey, and we're still gathering data, and we are suspending judgment as much as we can. A survey of 1,200 women in Essence magazine shows that images of black women, to them, are overwhelmingly negative in the media. Okay, 7% of all directors in Hollywood were women in 2016. Only 6% of writers were black, only 4% of directors. So if we had 50% of the directors in Hollywood who were women, we would certainly have different kinds of images or portrayals of women than we see. There's more. Even though whites appear more, this is from a scholar who looked at a quantitative look at a lot of movies in America. There are more white characters who appear in movies than black characters. But when you talk about vulgar profanity and you sort the data on that, 89% of the characters who are engaged in vulgar profanity are black characters. Only 17% are white. Where movies show physical violence, 56% of the characters are black, only 11% are white. 5-to-1. Where movies show a lack of self-control, 55% are black, 6% are white. 10-to-1. The Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, which is responsible for deciding who will win the awards, is mostly men and 90% white. It's a white boys' club. More than 350 whites have been nominated for Best Actor and Actress, compared to just 21 blacks. The absence of blacks, this is a very important sentence, the absence of blacks employed in top-level positions means they are not at the table when negative portrayals of African Americans are arguably green-lighted. That is an important observation to make. But we're still collecting data, so let's go and collect some more. We're going to take a look at Maury Povich. Maury is shocked by what he sees. So Maury has kind of defined himself as the moral voice of reality TV.
He needs to be just like me. We are grown-ass women. Can't nobody control us. We had sex with over 20 guys. No one can stop us. Not even our stupid-ass mother can do anything about it. We like to drink, smoke, party, and have sex. Every chance we get, we steal our mom's money and even pawn her jewelry. And we don't care if we get caught.
Now, he does have white kids doing that too. But of course, Maury is saying, oh, isn't this terrible? We have to do something about it. But he has shown you an extremely racially stereotypic image of, and a very uncomplimentary image. Now, Maury Povich is the producer of the show, and he has had a number of producers. And they are putting out these portrayals on afternoon TV, but with the context that we're going to do something about this terrible situation.
I see right through you, Mr. Media. Don't believe everything they're telling you. No one questions or thinks to mention that half the things we see on TV are just fabricated lies. A distorted version of the truth that we believe in because we trust in these power figures. We quote these power figures.
There's another side to this, and that is the moral context evolves such that we have racially stereotypic scenes, but this time we're fighting corrupt white people, corrupt cops. And in gang-related, we see the racial black people involved in violence, but the bad guy here is the white guy.
The pimps, the killers, the drug dealers, they're all garbage. Nothing wrong with taking out the garbage. Do us. What, are you joking me? I need you to do something.
Good, I need the money.
So we have our Jezebel, we have the racially stereotypic scenes, but the bad guy is a white guy this time. Well, that's nice. Who produced this one? Well, there we again we have our contingent of people at the top who are producers, directors, who are behind the scenes in making these movies. So we're now going to look at a movie called Hustle and Flow, again, with a moral dimension to it, like how hard it is out there to be a pimp. So that may sound funny to you, but this is a story about a guy who's trying not to be one. And but it has all the 1899 imagery that we've been accustomed to.
It ain't the size of the dog in the fight. It's the size of the fight in the dog.
And writer and director Craig Brewer. This is distributed by Paramount, and I don't even know if the CEO knows about this movie, but without Paramount behind it, I'm sure this movie would not have been distributed or seen. In another movie called Paid in Full, there's another moral theme where the hero tries to stay out of the drug business, and while he's doing that, dozens of racially stereotypic scenes appear before us.
This is the wave of the future. Yeah, I was tripping into a whole lot of money. Life is good in Harlem, baby.
And we have the producer of this show, Brett Ratner. The distributors are Miramax, who have a subsidiary. There's a lot of subsidiaries here, and trying to find the people at the top is a little difficult, but it was distributed by Dimension Films, which was owned by Miramax, which was run by Bob and Harvey Weinstein. So in another movie called Waist Deep, we have another moral theme. An ex-con here is trying to go straight. But while he's trying to go straight, we're going to show you quite a few racially stereotypic images.
Waist deep.
Man and woman.
Please consider this duo armed and dangerous.
They're only hitting safe deposit boxes.
Those safe deposit boxes belong to Big Me.
Where's my money?
You're the girl from the TV? Man, you guys are like the new modern-day Bonnie and Clyde. Yo, can I get your autograph?
This couple is mixed up with more than just banks.
Shooting up people and having a gun and all that is probably violent.
So, music, I don't want to de-emphasize the fact that black people are not involved in this. The music director, sometimes the director, sometimes the producer, sometimes the writer. Okay, this is not an entirely white enterprise. But the people at the top often tend to be white people. Now, this picture, this was made by Rogue Pictures, which was taken over by Relative Media, which belonged to Focus Features. So it's really hard to find out who's doing what. But it appears that Peter Lynn was the chairman, or is presently the chairman, of Focus Features, and that historically this is how that movie came into being. Ted Field was the producer of this movie. Take away the producer, and pretty much you take away the movie. Juice appears. This is more just pure black-on-black violence.
What you gonna do, shoot me in the elevator?
Producer David Hyman, Neil Moritz, producer Peter Frankfurt. Now this one is a bothersome scene to me, and I hesitated to show it, but it completely encapsulates the 1899 stereotype of the black male, and so I just feel that it had to be shown. This is a morality play again with a young veteran, a Marine, who's trying to provide for his family and stand up to violence.
See, I ain't the enemy, young blood. I don't want no trouble. See, I tried to be a friend, motherfucker. Surprise, nigga. Big bad Marines. Look at you now. Does she suck you? Fuck you. Make you feel like a man. Make you feel real good. Homeboy. Now, she wasn't doing it like that before you went to the war, now, was she? Now you getting all that good loving. And you can't even put food on your fucking table. Come on, Santa Claus. Open your mouth and suck this. Come on, I got a present for you. Suck it! Suck it, nigga!
It was unpleasant to me. And again, the Hughes brothers are from Detroit are the guys who did this movie. But if you look carefully, who produced it? Caravan Pictures, Hollywood Pictures. Caravan, Roth, Roger Birnbaum, producers. I can't believe Michael Eisner, the head of Disney, but Disney owned subsidiaries which had some relationship to Caravan. Now, let's not indict Michael Eisner here or anybody else. For all we know, Michael Eisner didn't even know his company made this movie. Okay, but we do have white people who are behind at the highest levels of these movies, and these movies, I don't think, would be seen without these higher level folks. This is a more recent movie called Straight Outta Compton, a bit of a warning for teenagers.
Hey, what up, guys? Come, Rick.
Okay, and screenplay by Jonathan Herman and Andrea Berloff. Now, I don't know if she got an award for that script, but she got some kind of an award. David Engel and Scott Producer, among others, are producers of this movie. Okay. Never Die Alone. A ruthless drug lord returns to New York City.
Well, I'll be damned.
You miss me?
Ain't nobody never missed a rattlesnake. How the hell could somebody possibly miss you?
Somebody you've been waiting for a long time. Where is he?
What line of work did you say you were in again?
Various investments around town. This is America. I did live a pretty extraordinary life. How old are you anyway?
Old enough.
Okay. So here we have a black director, in this case, Ernest Dickerson. Not too many of those, but there are some in the John Singleton. There are black directors involved in this genre. I don't know what we call this genre. Thug, gangster, blaxploitation. I don't know. I'm taking nominations. However, there are the usual entourage of white people here. This was written by Alessandro Camon. It is distributed by Fox Searchlight, which acquired the rights to distribute this movie. Thomas Rothman is the CEO, the former CEO. Stephen Guila is the current CEO. And I believe this movie is currently still available. Hot Boys. Moral subtext here. This is about police corruption and getting even with police brutality and corruption. But we still have our repetitive imagery of a black stabbing a white and a black person shooting a white person.
And settle all the scores.
All right, I'm editing some of this, but Richard Pepin, Joseph Mary, producers. The last edition in our evidence collection basket. There are plenty of movies. There may be 60 to 100 movies that feature black racial stereotypes. But we're only doing 16. This one is American Gangster. It grossed $266 million, and this is a so-called historical biography of a real person. But it has all the 1899 images of a black man, a criminal, a cold-blooded killer.
Here's a jar right here, 20%. Oh, you got the jar? That's right. Get the fuck out of here, Frank. Oh, what you gonna do? What the fuck you gonna do, Frank? Huh? What you doing? You gonna shoot me in front of everybody? Huh? Come on.
Okay, the true story at its core of the rise and fall and redemption, underline that word, of a 70s era Harlem drug lord is so terrific, it's amazing. Over 12 award nominations, okay? And the cast of characters, the writer is white, male, Universal. Brian Grazer is the producer. Ridley Scott is the director. Peter Kramer of Universal. Universal is involved in this movie. So if you started to look at all the white people that in just 16 movies, I mean, there isn't enough room on my slide to include them. All right, and it continues. I think there are 3 white women in this. We've talked about 16 films, and of these films, 55 white people are involved in kind of like the highest level positions. 54% are producers. Okay, so here's what Russell Simmons says about this situation in Hollywood.
I'm saying, to get back to the problem. The problem is that there's nobody black pushing buttons nowhere. Nowhere, in charge of nothing. Forget the Oscars.
That's interesting because I mean, well, the president
Think about it.
The president of the Academy is an African American woman.
Yeah, all right. President of the Academy, the Academy.
Studio head.
It's a lot. The conversation is who's pressing the buttons. Nobody black. Period. No president, no studio is black. No president, no TV show company is black. No vice president, nobody of any significance at all.
So even
in the agency business,
even at Netflix,
is black. Nobody.
Wow, that's pretty interesting.
The black.
So I would like us to continue to suspend judgment, because I haven't even got to the purpose of this video yet. But let's put facts here and motives here. We don't know what the motives are, but we can look at through facts. White people are telling stories about black people which contain repetitive racial stereotypes. I think that's a fact, okay? They did it in 1899, and they're still doing it in 2017. They're not doing it exclusively. Black people are also telling stories about black people. But that is a fact, okay? Now let's go back to this old slide. What are the motives? Why are you doing this? Blaxploitation is the worst motive I can think of. You're trying to sell tickets to black pathology, and you're a white person who's doing it. You're doing it on the backs of black people. Is that really why you're doing this? I don't think there are many people in that entourage of pictures that you just saw who would say, yeah, that's why I'm doing it. I don't think they would admit to that. Maybe it's...
Show some balance. And there, people out here are doing the right thing, who aren't having babies out of wedlock, who are taking care of their children.
Why is there reluctance to put them on TV?
Why? That's not what they want to see.
Spike Lee has made a number of movies. He objects to the fact that blacks are taken out of context so much. Cultural appropriation is what they call it in universities. But he says that's what people want to see. There's a market for it. And so that's what blaxploitation is, meeting that market need. Okay, let's go to a little better possible motive, telling it like it is. I'm sorry, folks, this is the way it is in the inner city: crime, prostitution, pimping. Get used to it. We have First Amendment rights in the United States. We're telling it like it is. And tough, that's the way it is. And that's why we made this documentary, or all these 11 documentaries on pimps. Well, here we go back with Patricia Rose, who said, wait just a second. There are disabled people in the ghetto, in the inner city. There are homeless people in the inner city where I don't see any movies about them. There are mothers who are trying to raise children in the inner city whose husbands are either in prison or have abandoned them, and they're not pole dancers. And there are far more disabled people than there are pimps. So why are you making all these movies about one subject and not another? You're not really telling it like it is, folks. Okay, well taken and well put. Another, and this is the motivation that I think most of these people who are in this industry would probably subscribe to. Probably. No, I did not make a movie, a racist movie. I made a movie about against pimping, against murder, against violence, against drugs, against gangs. I made a movie about redemption. I made a movie about surviving the ghetto in Fresh, and a kid, how he survives all of these horrific situations. This is an enlightening, elevating movie, and you're missing the point. You're taking all this stuff out of context. Okay? I think a lot of people would say that's what I'm doing.
I'm not sure I approve of the company you keep, Mr. Bone.
Me neither. I am a fighter.
So we're looking to sit at the grown-ups table, are we?
So this guy is fighting a white corruption, right? Okay, fine. And so that's maybe a justification for these themes. But they call him Mr. Bone, okay? They call the movie Juice, Hot Boys. And I think there's something else beyond just simply the moral theme here. Nonetheless, I think one of the defenses for their motivation would be that there's a moral thing that we're not seeing here. Another thing we brought up earlier is we're part of the establishment. We're opening doors for black writers, black artists, giving them a shot. Like the Hughes brothers, they would never have made their movie without white producers. So we're helping people. Now let's put down other, because maybe we just don't know why they're doing this. And I'm not doing this as an attorney. I'm not an attorney. I am not indicting these people. okay? I'm not doing this as an activist, okay? I am doing this as a psychologist. And we haven't even got to the point yet. I've asked you to suspend your judgment because here is where we get down to the core. And this is something that Hollywood either does not understand or is in total denial of. So this is, I'm a psychologist, and now we're going to talk about what I'm qualified to talk about here. All right, so stay with me for just a second. I'm introducing, this is a rat that goes into a maze. You put a little tiny white rat in a maze, and it wanders around, doesn't know what to do with itself, okay? It takes this rat almost an hour to follow the white lines and get to the source of the food. After 2 days, doing pretty well. It's down to like 10 minutes. By the time we get to the last, it can do this whole thing by the 4th day in 8 seconds. It just follows the white line and boom, it's got to do it. So it's exposure, it's repetition, practice makes perfect. Now, in conditioning, we're talking about conditioning now. This is important. Here's a guy who's attached to a puff of air. The guy squeezes the ball, a puff of air goes into his eye, and he blinks. Puff, blink. Puff, blink. Okay? Squeeze, puff, blink. There's nothing learning. There's no learning here. This is called an unconditioned reflex. If I puffed some air in your eye, you'd blink too. But could I make you blink to the sound of a tap on this computer? Could I make you blink to that? You'd say, no, you can't. Oh, yes, I can. By exposure, by repetition, I can condition you to blink to the sound of a bird chirping. So here we're going to pair sound, squeeze, puff, blink, sound, squeeze, puff, blink, sound, squeeze, puff, blink.
Do them at the same time. And I'm going to try and use a pencil tap here and pair that with the puff of air enough times, and then let's eventually see what happens.
Now he's going to alternate, and sometimes he's not going to squeeze. And you're going to see the guy blink just to the sound of a tapping pen.
See what happened?
We got the point. So you say, okay, Jerry, what the heck does this have to do with the movies we've been talking about and with racial stereotypes? It's all about conditioning. Blackface violence, blackface gun, blackface rape, blackface fighting, blackface shots fired, blackface drugs, blackface sexuality, blackface murder, blackface junkie. Okay, we are developing some conditioned associations here. Let's do that one more time. Practice makes perfect. Blackface violence, blackface gun, blackface rape, blackface fighting, blackface junkie. One more time, a little faster this time. All right, so we are making an association, conditioned association. Now, let's do some math, classical conditioning math. You remember the Wesley Snipes movie grossed $288 million. Imagine these movies in this genre, whatever you want to call it, grossed $500 million. That's not an unreasonable assumption. Okay, at $8 a ticket, that's 62.5 million people who've been exposed to these images. Puff, puff, puff. Okay? Now, assuming that each one of these movies had at least 3 racially stereotypic scenes in it, that means that there have been 187.5 million scenes sent out, puff, 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 into the eyes of 62 million people. Okay? Blackface violence, blackface gun, blackface rape, blackface fighting, blackface shots fired, blackface drugs, blackface profanity. We're in a conditioning paradigm without really recognizing that we are. We're in conditioning school, Hollywood's racial stereotype conditioning school.
On the big screen, black men as violent criminals, as pimps, as drug dealers, and in music videos, rappers glorifying the thug life.
Because it's thugs in the hood, thugs in the hood.
Portraying women as sex objects.
Believe me, black guys wear suits and ties to work every day. But on the whole, we're portrayed as the guys with the braids, pants down to our knees in a white tee with a gun. This does not reflect me or most black men. But if you turn on the TV, you think that's all we have become.
So the conditioning is often ignored, and this subject is often ignored, because these movies seem to be couched in a moral context. And somehow that is seen as a justification for the conditioning. And there's no understanding that the conditioning is occurring anyway. Violence and racial stereotypes are embedded in a moral context. Here's Isaiah Bone again. He's trying to start a new life. But you're going to see something else besides him starting a new life.
You got to the count of 5. You just signed your own death certificate, player. 5.
After 5 years inside, Isaiah Bone is ready to start a new life.
Okay, I guess in introducing the thesis of this video, the session, we ask a question, in all fairness, does the moral and ethical narrative of this movie erase the conditioning? Let's take a look a little more at the moral and ethical narrative.
Ain't nobody coming to save you. You and your friends did wrong, Daryl. I'm just talking to you one black man to another. All right, because, see, if you don't know when you done wrong, well, life ain't worth a damn. Well, that's good. Well, they got gangs over there in Venice, you know. So you got to watch out. Don't get in with no gangs.
Okay, I don't want to do that no way.
So Hollywood seemed to think that, yes, indeed, those positive role models and that moral narrative justifies everything else that's going on. And they don't seem to get the idea of conditioning at all. Look at some of the reviews of these movies. I mean, it's amazing. This is delusion and denial, as far as I'm concerned. Here is, it's called one of the greatest achievements in television artistry. These are the movies that you have just seen excerpts of. Unlikely as this may sound, Hustle and Flow, remember we showed you that? Is about a low-down Memphis pimp who wants to be a rapper. It's the feel-good movie of the summer. Oh, really? That's going to make us feel good this summer. The greatest drama of the past 25 years. Remember Fresh, the 12-year-old boy? Here's a movie filled with drama and excitement, unfolding a plot of brilliant complexity. Where are these reviewers from? Stylishly shot. It works well as a thriller. The result is energetic and entertaining. Golly. The most important concept in this video, okay, is these folks who are in this industry writing these reviews are missing a huge point. The moral context does not erase the conditioning. They think it does. They wish it did. They think it ought to. They think it should. But the word from psychology, and my profession has been egregiously remiss in communicating this, is that it does not erase the conditioning. It does not. That's what Hollywood is missing. That's what these producers that we have been talking about here are missing. Okay, we have lots of positive role models in Hollywood, and they're in these movies here and there and here and there. The good detective, the good teacher, the uncorruptible female detective. And you think, well, okay, that justifies the scenery, the repetitive imagery. It does not. Okay, and moral ideation is different than the stereotypic image. The stereotypic image that you see involves shock, a cringe reaction, a micro-trauma, a startle reaction. That's all part of the conditioning. See this little girl? She winces. Okay, so do you. When you see these images, here's a rat getting a gunshot and one more. Okay, there is a little habituation. Gets not quite as bad after the first time, but that's what you go through when you're experiencing these things. And all the moral narratives in the world does not take away that psychophysiological reactivity, okay? These scenes scare you, condition you, and that conditioning does not get taken away by that wonderful speech he made about don't you get involved with gangs. All right? I don't know how many times a black teenager has pointed a gun in your face. It's never happened to me, but I've had that experience many, many times in movies. And these events leave scar tissue. You've been shot at a lot of times by black people, more than you want and more than you would admit, but far more than you've ever encountered in the real world. So I want to explain this concept in some rather crude terms, okay? So I'm going to call this the Povich paradox. So a guided fantasy in psychology is you make something up in order to explain it. So my apologies to Maury Povich. I'm making this up. I want you to fantasize that Maury Povich comes home from work, or his executive producers, they come home from work one day and they say, you know what, I really think I did good today. I think I helped 2 delinquent girls get better. I think that I feel good about what I do. I really do feel that I intervened in a kid's life and I made things better. Can you imagine that? Now, I want you also to imagine that maybe Maury actually did help 2 girls and they did get better. All right, so put that in your consciousness. Maury comes home and thinks he did good, and he actually did good. What's the Povich paradox? Maury is sort of thinking of himself as a social worker, right? Like, I've intervened in a person's life and I've changed them for the better. I looked up to see if any social work organizations have ever endorsed the show. I couldn't find any. I looked up some of the ethics of social workers. Social workers should not take unfair advantage or exploit others to further their business interests. So you don't say, hey, here's some black pathology. Tune in tomorrow and you'll see some more. Here we're selling tickets to more pathology of white and black teenagers. We want higher ratings. You don't do that. Social workers do not advertise the pathology of their clients. So Maury is not a social worker, okay? But maybe in our fantasy, he thinks of himself as having made a good move and that he's proud of his work and his producers are proud of their work. Here's the Povich paradox. These girls are talking to the camera. They are not talking to Maury.
We jumped in together and beat the hell out of him.
We slapped, punched, and kicked our mother when she tried to tell us what to do. We don't give a damn.
We slapped, kicked, and punched our mother. We don't care. And they are looking at you, the viewer, the same way the black teenager we saw earlier fired a gun directly in your face. It involves you, the viewer. They're not talking to Maury. So the dark side of this is these programs often appeared in the past on network TV. If maybe you're not supposed to watch it as a kid, but kids get access to it. So how does a kid process this information? A white kid who's watching Maury Povich, what is he saying to that scene? He's saying, those black girls kicked and slapped their mother. Or is this kid saying, black girls kick and slap their mothers? You're just one inch away from a racist stereotype in the mind of this 8-year-old or 12-year-old or 17-year-old kid who happens to be watching that afternoon network show. And as far as how a black child reacts to that, he has a closer identification with these 2 girls, and yet the moralist is Maury Povich, who's a white guy, who's telling him, this is bad, this is bad. How does he process that? So Maury may think that he's doing good, but he is doing something else besides good. All right? So you might say, well, what about R ratings and cable access and viewer discretion advised? Doesn't that protect children from this kind of damage? And the answer is really no. There was an undercover study of 296 theaters that showed R-rated movies, and they found that 46% of underage children got access. So that's a 50% probability that an underage kid will get access to an R-rated movie. So another way of explaining this, and it's not a difficult concept, but since Hollywood doesn't seem to get it at all, I'm going to take a little moment to get this out. Let's say I'm giving a TED Talk on pornography. Here are 16 reasons why pornography is bad, deleterious, unhealthy, unhelpful, exploitative. Here's reason 1. Here's reason 2. Oh, by the way, let me show you what I'm talking about, okay? Now, if I show you an image of what I'm talking about, that's different than all of the moral narrative that I'm giving you. The image has power. The image is not harmless. TED is not going to offer me any more TED Talks if I show images of porn. Now, I can talk all I want about pornography, but if I show images, they're destructive. If people seem to know that, but Hollywood doesn't seem to get it. So here's where the delusion and denial is. The denial is, in Hollywood, that the images are not that impactful or consequential. And the delusion is that the moral narrative supersedes, mitigates, and or erases the conditioning and the traumatic damage caused by the images. Not true. Not true. The racist or racially stereotypic imagery gets imprinted, embedded, archived. The conditioning does not get erased by positive role models, by Maury doing good, or by uplifting heroic stories of transcendence, struggle, or redemption. That is the message Hollywood does not seem to be getting. And here's the evidence is everywhere you look, and I'm going to present you a little evidence. Here's an eBay ad, okay? A guy is holding up an iPod with a white hand, and then there's a photograph of a black hand holding up the same iPod. The same exact description of the iPod on eBay. The white hand got 25% more bids than the black hand. That's called racism. And what causes that? These are people who are probably not even racists. Well, black is, we're conditioned to think black is associated with crime, profanity, theft, and we don't trust the black hand as much as the white hand. Okay, and how did we develop that? It's called conditioning, and we're victims of it. Here, our university professors are consider themselves very egalitarian. They're very, very much accustomed to diversity and equal opportunity. Very few bigots there. So 300 letters are sent out to 300 professors. Okay, it's basically the same letter. I'd like to have information about your program, professor. Except one letter is signed by a guy named Brendan, white-sounding name, and another is signed by a guy named Jamal, not particularly white-sounding name, to professors who are not at all bigoted or racist. 50%. Brendan got 50% more answers from his letter than did Jamal. That's racism, isn't it? Okay? And it's racism in a population that doesn't think they're racists. The conditioning accumulates.
Hi. Every 45 seconds, a black man enters an elevator, and some stupid white bitch clutches her purse for her dear life. Now, you might not think we notice, but we do.
I had to edit that out. It was a little too profane for this video. Danny Glover is interviewed. He's famous, he's rich, he's made many, many movies, and somebody asked him, how often do you think of yourself as a black man in America? And he said, every single day of my life. He said, I don't care how rich you are or how famous you are. If you're a black male, you just try to get a taxi in New York City. They just drive right by. Why? Black is associated with fear, with danger, with crime, with profanity, with all of these things. I'm not going to take a chance on you. So, blackface violence, blackface gun, blackface rape, blackface fighting, blackface shots fired, blackface drugs, blackface sexuality, blackface gun in your face. Okay? That's the conditioning. It's happening everywhere all the time, and we are absorbing it. So, has a black man ever pointed a gun at you? That's the question. Yes, he has. Many, many, many times. But not in reality. And you register those things. Those things get imprinted. This is a strange experiment which I really thought deserves some attention. A black filmmaker takes a black kid in a pretty affluent neighborhood with a sign that says, "Please help, I'm hungry." And he also has a white kid holding the same sign saying, "Please help, I'm hungry."
It says, "Please help, I'm hungry." You can walk right past the kid. That shit just doesn't make sense.
He did, the kid was there for over an hour, the black kid, and nothing happened. So now a white kid changes roles.
Yeah. All right. Good job, man. Let's switch out.
Yeah. Thank you.
Just had it.
Thank you.
Say that again.
1 second.
1 second.
What's in there?
1 second.
So you got a quesadilla. So the meaning is the negative racist stereotypic images leave a legacy, a residue, a conditioned memory trace, and that's why you walk by the black kid and not the white kid. That's why you buy the iPod from the white hand, not the black hand. It's why Danny Glover cannot get a taxi in New York City. The conditioning is everywhere, and it doesn't get erased. Now, there is a story that you've heard. If it bleeds, it leads. Have you heard that? If a story is negative, it gets more attention than if it's positive. It's not because the networks are in conspiracy and against us. It's because, this is from my book, The Psychic Immune System. We are programmed to scan for danger, okay? We are monitoring the world for danger. It's a normal survival reflex. So a story that talks about a crash or a tornado or horrific storm gets our attention more than a story about the best electric car ever made. We just, and that's kind of like an empirical fact of life. People respond to negative headlines 30% more than positive. People recognize negative words like cancer, bomb, war when they're flashed at them more than they see positive words like smile or fun. We're programmed. It's kind of a survival reflex to monitor the world for danger and threat. In 2014, there were 16 mega stories. Like Bill Cosby appeared many, many times in that year. And these are the mega stories of the entire year. There were 16 of them, 88%. 88% were negative. Okay, so the negative scary scenes get processed differently in our brains. Negative images of blacks get more attention than positive images. So Hollywood's assessment that if we have a movie about heroism and triumph and with positive role models, that justifies and mitigates all those negative racially stereotypic scenes. It's not true. So here's more proof. This is the implicit association test that psychology developed a few years ago. Here's an explanation.
We actually created a test that measures bias. You see words that capture good and bad. You have to associate Yankees with good and Red Sox with bad. This is very easy for a Yankee fan. But when you tell them to associate Yankee with bad and Red Sox with good, That's an impossible thing for them to do. They can't do it. They'll make mistakes. They'll take a lot longer to do it, and so on. Take a test like this and now just replace Red Sox and Yankees with the groups black and white. Imagine that for half the trials on this test, you have to associate black with good whenever you see a black face or a word like love, peace, joy, friend, all these good things. And while you're doing that, you have to put white and bad together, and words that mean terrible things in the world, words like agony, devil, bomb, vomit. How hard is that for you to do, is the question. We're not talking about your conscious attitudes. We're not talking about your conscious beliefs. We're talking about something that you yourself may not necessarily know you have. For something like 75% of white Americans, it's very hard to put black and good together.
So a lot of people who are not racists at all are very disappointed with the results on this test.
Your data suggests a slight automatic preference for European American compared to African American.
He didn't like that result.
And in like kindergarten or elementary school, like white is like heavenly and like angels. Black is always like associated with like coal or like darkness. So I'm not surprised that that's an automatic response because we've been so conditioned to think that way.
We're really talking about conditioning here. Now, the data is horrific. 70% of whites who are not racists, okay, have an implicit preference for whites over blacks. They have a bias, okay? 70% of the population has been conditioned. Now, another study showed that 88% of whites have an implicit bias for whites, and even 50% of blacks have an implicit bias for whites. So the conditioning is pervasive. Now, the message of this video is that the moral context does not erase the conditioning, and you're seeing evidence of the conditioning everywhere you look. Now, Hollywood does not seem to understand that there are different neurological pathways for the processing of this information. The moral narrative of the good role model goes here, and the image and the gunshot and the profanity goes somewhere else. So there was a study done in which people who scored on this test were given brain scans, and when they saw images of negative emotions of fear associated with black faces, their amygdala lighted up. So in effect, when you have a conditioned, fearful, racial, stereotypic image, it goes towards the amygdala, which is a emotional processing center of the brain, whereas the moral story, the moral narrative, is processed elsewhere. Okay? Conclusion is that Hollywood does not seem to get the idea that when you show these scary, dangerous images associated with black people, boom, 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 187 million times, it does not justify the profits. It does not justify anything. It is not justified by the moral narrative. It is a form of conditioning that makes the population, black and white, think of black faces with fear, with aversion, with trepidation. Okay, this happens to white people, it happens to black people, it happens to old people, it happens to teenagers, and it happens to very, very young children who don't even process the moral narrative. But the conditioning is there. Thank you very much for watching.
Can you show me the doll that you like best or that you'd like to play with?
Which one is the white doll?
That one.
Which doll is the pretty doll? Which doll is the nice doll? Which doll is the bad doll? Which doll is the nice doll?
Can you show me the doll that is the nice doll? And why is that the nice doll?
He's white.
And can you show me the doll that looks bad? Okay. And can you give, and why does that look bad?
Because it's black.
And why do you think that's a nice doll?
Because she is white.
And which doll is the bad doll? Which doll looks most like you?
Like me?
Yeah, which one looks like you?
And that one.
Okay.
That doll.